What happens when a man publicly calls his mistress royalty while humiliating his pregnant ex-wife, only to watch his entire world crumble the moment she walks back in with a billionaire's smile. Tonight's story isn't just about betrayal, it's about the most spectacular revenge you've ever seen. Sarah Mitchell thought she'd lost everything when her tech mogul husband stole her life's work and chose a younger woman. But what Jake didn't know was that his boring ex-wife had been building an empire in the shadows. This is how a small-town teacher became the most dangerous woman in Austin's tech scene, and how sometimes the prey becomes the predator in ways no one sees coming. If stories of underdogs rising up give you chills, drop a comment, hit that like button, and subscribe, because you won't want to miss what happens when real royalty claims her throne. Let's dive in. Sarah Mitchell sat in her tiny Austin apartment, one hand on her 7-month pregnant belly, the other gripping her phone as her world collapsed in real time. The notification had seemed innocent enough. Your ex-husband is live on Tech Talk Austin. She should have ignored it. Should have focused on debugging her AI educational platform instead of torturing herself with Jake's latest publicity stunt. But something masochistic made her tap the link. The live stream showed Jake in his Element designer hoodie, perfectly tousled hair, sitting across from podcast host Derek Manning in a sleek downtown studio. 53,000 viewers were watching live. "So, Jake," Derek was saying, "you've been pretty quiet about your personal life lately. Divorce, new relationship. How's all that affecting your work?" Jake's smile was the same charming grin that had won Sarah over 8 years ago when she was a small-town Oklahoma teacher and he was a struggling computer science student. Now it looked calculated, predatory. "You know, Derek, sometimes you have to cut dead weight to soar," Jake said, leaning back casually. "I was married to someone who just couldn't keep up with my vision. Small-town mentality. You know, she wanted me to stay safe, teach high school coding, maybe run a little computer repair shop." Sarah's breath caught. He was talking about her to 50,000 strangers. "But you found someone who gets it," Derek prompted. "Oh man, have I ever..." Jake's eyes lit up with genuine enthusiasm for the first time. "Amber is incredible. She's got this entrepreneurial spirit, this hunger for success. She's what I call real royalty. Not like my boring pregnant ex-wife who thinks changing the world means organizing school fundraisers." The comment section exploded with fire emojis and laughing faces. Someone wrote, "Dodged that bullet, another pregnancy trap." Sarah felt physically sick, not just from the public humiliation, but from the casual cruelty. This was the man she'd supported through graduate school, who she'd given up her teaching career for, who'd promised her they'd build something beautiful together. "Speaking of your ex," Derek continued with the shark-like enthusiasm of a host sensing drama, "wasn't there some kind of custody situation brewing?" "Look, I don't want to get into it too much," Jake said, suddenly looking appropriately somber. "But when someone is clearly unstable, when they're making wild accusations and trying to sabotage your business relationships, you have to protect yourself. And honestly, I have to think about what's best for the kid." Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from her best friend, Riley Cooper. "Please tell me you're not watching this garbage." But she couldn't look away. It was like watching a car accident in slow motion. "The thing is," Jake continued, warming to his theme, "some people are builders, and some people are just anchors. My ex was an anchor, sweet girl, meant well, but she had zero ambition. Now I'm with a queen who wants to conquer the world with me." The host laughed appreciatively. "Well, we're all looking forward to seeing what you build next. Your AI platform launch is coming up soon, right?" Sarah's blood went cold. AI platform. She'd been working on her educational AI system in secret for months, pouring her savings and every spare moment into it. Jake didn't know anything about artificial intelligence beyond basic programming. Yeah, we're calling it EduGenius. It's going to revolutionize how kids learn. Personalized AI tutoring that adapts to each student's needs. We're talking to some major investors next week. That was her idea. Her code. Her late nights and weekend work while he'd been off with Amber, building what she'd thought was his startup focused on small business software. Sarah's hands shook as she screenshot the live stream. Then she called Riley. "Did you see it?" Sarah asked without preamble when Riley picked up. "Honey, I'm so sorry. What a complete piece of garbage. But why do you do this to yourself?" "Riley, he stole my AI platform idea. That's what I've been working on. EduGenius is literally the name I picked out." Silence on the other end. "Then, what are you talking about?" "I've been developing an AI tutoring system. Educational technology. I never told him about it because I wanted it to be mine. Something he couldn't touch in the divorce. But somehow, he knows." "Sarah, are you sure maybe it's just a coincidence?" He described my exact concept, my code name, Riley. He's been in my apartment. He still has keys from when we were separated, but trying to work things out. He must have gone through my computer. Sarah heard typing in the background. Riley was already in investigative journalist mode. "Okay, I'm digging into this. Do you have everything backed up documentation that proves you developed it first?" "Yes, but Riley, what am I supposed to do?" "I'm 7 months pregnant, broke, and he's about to present my work to investors as his own. Even if I could prove theft, I can't afford lawyers." The live stream was still playing. Jake was now taking questions from viewers, basking in their admiration. Someone asked about his relationship timeline. "Amber and I have been together about 6 months now," he said easily. "Best 6 months of my life. She's taught me what it means to be with someone who actually supports your dreams instead of trying to clip your wings." 6 months. Sarah had been trying to save their marriage 6 months ago. They'd been in counseling. She'd believed they were making progress. "Sarah?" Riley's voice brought her back. "I'm coming over. Don't do anything crazy until I get there." But as Sarah ended the call and watched Jake laugh at another viewer's joke about crazy exes, she realized something had fundamentally shifted inside her. The woman who'd spent months crying, who'd begged him to work on their marriage, who'd blamed herself for not being enough, that woman was dissolving. In her place, something harder was crystallizing. Something that remembered she'd been valedictorian of her class, that she'd built innovative teaching programs from scratch, that she'd been solving complex problems long before she met Jake Mitchell. He wanted to call her an anchor fine, but he was about to learn that some anchors, when raised, could sink ships. The next morning, Sarah sat in Epoch Coffee, nursing her third decaf latte and staring at her laptop screen. The cursor blinked mockingly in her empty email inbox. She'd sent query letters to 12 investors, describing her EduGenius platform in careful detail. None had responded. Meanwhile, Jake's social media showed him in meetings with Austin's biggest venture capital firms. Her phone buzzed another missed call from her lawyer. Sarah couldn't afford to keep him much longer. The retainer was almost gone, and Jake's legal team was bleeding her dry with endless motions and discovery requests. "Excuse me, are you Sarah Mitchell?" Sarah looked up to see a distinguished black man in his 40s, wearing an expensive suit but carrying himself with academic ease. Something about him seemed familiar. "I'm Marcus Bennett. I hope you don't mind the intrusion, but I've been following your work." Sarah's pregnancy brain struggled to place him. "I'm sorry. Have we met?" "Not exactly. I'm a venture capitalist. But I also used to teach computer science at UT. Your undergraduate thesis on adaptive learning algorithms was brilliant. I've actually been hoping someone would tackle AI in education the way you outlined. Sarah's coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. Her thesis was 8 years old, buried in university archives. You read my thesis. Marcus smiled, and it transformed his whole face. Occupational hazard. I scout talent by reading academic work. Your approach to personalized learning was ahead of its time. He gestured to the empty chair across from her. May I, despite every instinct screaming that this was too convenient? Sarah nodded. She was desperate enough to hear anyone out. I understand you've been developing an educational AI platform, Marcus continued, settling into his seat. I'd love to hear about it. How did you know about that? Austin's tech scene is smaller than people think. Word gets around when someone's working on something innovative. His expression grew serious. I also heard about your ex-husband's recent announcement. That must be difficult. Sarah studied his face. He seemed genuinely sympathetic, but venture capitalists didn't track down broke single mothers in coffee shops out of kindness. What exactly do you want? Mr. Bennett. Call me Marcus, and I want to make you an offer. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a tablet. I've been looking for the right person to partner with on educational technology, someone who understands both the technical side and the human element of learning. He showed her a presentation. Bennett Capital's portfolio included 3 successful edtech companies, 2 of which had been acquired by major corporations for hundreds of millions. I'd like to offer you a $2 million seed investment, Marcus said quietly, plus legal support to protect your intellectual property. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. $2 million. Enough to fight Jake, secure her future, give her child the life she dreamed of providing. What's the catch? Marcus laughed. I like direct people. The catch is, I want 51% equity and operational control. You'd be CTO, full creative control over the product, but I'd handle business decisions and investor relations. Why me? Why now? Because you're brilliant, and because you're hungry. Success isn't just about having a good idea. It's about having the right motivation to see it through. Right now, you have more motivation than anyone in Austin. Sarah looked around the coffee shop. Other patrons were absorbed in their own conversations, laptops, phones. Nobody paying attention to this life-changing moment happening at table 12. I'd need to review everything with my lawyer, she said carefully. Of course, take your time. But Sarah... Marcus leaned forward, his voice dropping. Don't let pride make you pass up the chance to show everyone what you're really capable of. After he left, Sarah sat staring at his business card, Marcus Bennett, managing partner, Bennett Capital Ventures. The card was heavy, expensive, real. Riley arrived 20 minutes later, sliding into Marcus's empty chair with the focused energy of someone who'd been up all night researching. Okay, I've got good news and bad news about your Jake situation, Riley said without preamble. Good news, I found evidence he's been planning this for months. Bad news, it's going to be almost impossible to prove in court unless we can get him to admit it. What kind of evidence? Domain registrations, trademark applications, incorporation documents, all filed 3 months ago, right around the time you told me you started working nights on your project. Sarah's stomach dropped. He was watching me, planning this. Gets worse. I also found out Amber's not just some influencer bimbo. She's got a business degree from Rice and worked for 2 different startups that went under after intellectual property theft scandals. So they're both con artists. Professional level. But here's the thing, I can't publish any of this without more concrete proof. and you can't use it in court unless you can prove a direct connection. Sarah pulled out Marcus's card. What if I told you someone just offered me $2 million to develop my AI platform? Riley's eyes widened. What who Sarah explained the morning's encounter? Riley listened with growing skepticism. Sarah, doesn't this seem a little too convenient? Mystery investor shows up right after Jake screws you over. Maybe. But what choice do I have? Jake's presenting to investors next week with my stolen ideas. I'm about to lose my apartment. I can't afford to fight him in court. Riley was already typing on her phone. Marcus Bennett, Bennett Capital. Okay, he's legit. Big portfolio, excellent reputation, no red flags in his background. She looked up. But seriously, he just approached you randomly. He said he read my undergraduate thesis from 8 years ago. Who does that? It was a good question, but as Sarah felt the baby kick inside her, as she thought about her dwindling bank account and Jake's smug face on that live stream, she realized she was past the point of looking gift horses in the mouth. Riley, I can't afford to be paranoid right now. If this gives me a chance to fight back, I have to take it. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Sarah, this is Marcus. My lawyers can meet with you tomorrow morning to review everything. We can have contracts ready by end of week if you're interested. Don't let this opportunity slip away. Riley read it over Sarah's shoulder. That's moving pretty fast. Everything's moving fast these days, Sarah replied, one hand on her belly. The question is whether I'm going to keep up or get left behind. But even as she said it, something nagged at her. Marcus had been almost too perfect, too prepared, too eager to help someone he'd supposedly just discovered. Still, as Sarah walked home past the gleaming towers of downtown Austin, past the coffee shops full of entrepreneurs and the billboards advertising the latest tech successes, she allowed herself to imagine a different future, one where she wasn't the victim of Jake's betrayal, but the architect of her own comeback. The baby kicked again, as if approving of her newfound determination. Sarah spent the weekend in a caffeine-fueled haze, preparing for the presentation that could change everything. Marcus's contracts sat on her kitchen table, legitimate, generous, almost too good to be true. She'd signed them Friday afternoon after her lawyer spent 3 hours failing to find any concerning clauses. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching Sarah's nervous energy. The investor meeting was at 10 a.m. in Marcus's downtown office. Jake's presentation to competing firms was happening at the exact same time across town. It's perfect timing, Marcus had assured her during their prep session. While he's showing off stolen ideas with no technical depth, you'll be demonstrating the real thing. Sarah's EduGenius demo was flawless. Her AI system adapted to different learning styles in real time, identified knowledge gaps, and provided personalized feedback that felt almost human. She'd spent 2 years perfecting the algorithms, drawing on her teaching experience to solve problems other developers never even recognized. The investor meeting exceeded every expectation. 5 venture capital partners, 2 education technology experts, and 1 former Department of Education official sat around Marcus's conference table, completely absorbed as Sarah walked them through the system. This is extraordinary, said Patricia Hawkins, a former teacher turned investor. The depth of pedagogical understanding here goes far beyond anything I've seen in EdTech. Sarah felt a rush of validation she hadn't experienced since Jake left. These weren't people humoring her, they were recognizing genuine innovation. What's your go-to-market strategy? Asked another partner. Marcus fielded this question smoothly, outlining plans to pilot in underserved school districts, build partnerships with educational publishers, eventually scale to international markets. He'd clearly done his homework. By 11:30, Sarah had verbal commitments for $4 million in Series A funding, double what Marcus had originally offered. The investors were talking about fast-tracking the development timeline, hiring a full engineering team, potentially launching by fall semester. "Sarah," Patricia said as the meeting wrapped up, "this is the kind of innovation that actually changes lives. I can't wait to see what you build." Sarah walked out of the building feeling lighter than she had in months. The Austin skyline looked different somehow, full of possibility instead of intimidation. Her phone buzzed with congratulatory texts from Marcus, scheduling emails from potential partners, interview requests from tech blogs. She was so absorbed in reading the messages that she almost missed the commotion outside the coffee shop where she'd first met Marcus. A crowd had gathered around someone's phone, voices carrying excitement and disbelief. No way he actually said that. It's going viral already. Dude's career is over. Sarah's blood chilled. She pushed through the crowd until she could see the phone screen. It was a live social media feed from Jake's investor presentation, but something had gone horribly wrong. The camera showed Jake mid-sentence, gesture frozen, face pale with shock. Behind him, his presentation screen displayed not his polished slides about EduGenius, but what looked like private messages, code snippets, and file timestamps, all clearly showing Sarah's name as the original developer. "As I was saying," Jake's voice continued on the recording, but now it sounded hollow, desperate. The technical architecture here represents months of development work." One of the investors, a sharp-faced woman in the front row, stood up. "Mr. Mitchell, these file timestamps show development beginning 14 months ago, but your incorporation documents are only 3 months old. Can you explain this discrepancy?" The crowd around Sarah grew larger as more people tuned into the live stream. Someone was recording everything, adding their own commentary. "Oh snap, he's getting exposed." Jake tried to recover. "There's obviously some technical error here. My team has been working on this since your team." Another investor interrupted. "Because the code comments here show a single developer, someone named S. Mitchell. That wouldn't happen to be Sarah Mitchell, your ex-wife who you publicly mocked last week for lack of ambition." Sarah's legs felt weak. Someone in the crowd recognized her. "Holy crap, you're her, you're S. Mitchell." Phones turned toward her. The live stream audience was exploding, viewer count climbing past 200,000 as word spread across social media. Jake's presentation had become a public execution, but somehow Sarah felt no satisfaction, only a growing dread as she realized what was happening. Her phone rang. Marcus. "Sarah, where are you? We need to talk immediately." "I'm watching Jake's presentation fall apart," she said, stepping away from the crowd. "That's what I'm calling about. There's been a complication." Sarah's stomach dropped. "What kind of complication?" "Meet me at my office. Now." The 15-minute drive felt like an hour. Social media was exploding with clips from Jake's disastrous presentation, and her stolen code was trending. Tech blogs were already publishing articles about the spectacular failure. Jake Mitchell had become the cautionary tale of the year in record time, but Sarah's phone was ominously silent from everyone who mattered. No calls from the investors who'd been excited about her project just hours earlier. No follow-up emails about funding timelines. Marcus was pacing his office when she arrived. His usual composed demeanor cracked. "Sarah, I'm afraid we have a problem. A serious one." "The investors are backing out," she said. It wasn't a question. "They're not just backing out. They're running. Patricia Hawkins called me 20 minutes ago. Apparently, there are legal concerns about funding a project that's involved in an active intellectual property dispute." Sarah sank into a chair. "But Jake stole from me, not the other way around. I know that. You know that. But from the outside, It looks like two ex-spouses fighting over the same idea. Investors hate messy personal drama. They especially hate anything that might end up in court with unclear ownership. The irony was suffocating. Jake's public humiliation should have been her vindication. Instead, it had poisoned her own opportunities. So what happens now? Marcus sat across from her, his expression genuinely sympathetic. We wait. Let the dust settle. Hope Jake doesn't try to claim you stole from him in some kind of desperate legal maneuver. Sarah's phone buzzed. A news alert. Tech CEO Jake Mitchell's career implodes in real time as intellectual property theft exposed during live investor presentation. Another buzz. A text from an unknown number. Karma's a bitch, isn't it? A. Amber. Somehow, even Jake's destruction wasn't enough to satisfy his girlfriend's cruelty. Marcus, Sarah said quietly. What if this was planned? What do you mean? What if someone wanted Jake to fail publicly? What if someone fed information to those investors specifically to sabotage his presentation? Marcus's face went very still. Sarah, why would you think that? Because it's too convenient? The timing, the specific documents that were exposed, the way it happened right during my presentation. Someone wanted to make sure we were both destroyed. The silence stretched between them. Finally, Marcus spoke. Even if that were true, it doesn't change our situation. No investor will touch this project now. I'm sorry, Sarah. I truly am. Walking out of Marcus's office, Sarah felt the crushing weight of false hope. For a few hours, she'd tasted victory. She'd seen her future clearly successful entrepreneur, respected developer, financial security for her child. Now she was back where she started, except worse. Jake was finished, but his destruction had taken her down too. They were both casualties of someone else's game. But as Sarah drove home through Austin's afternoon traffic, past the construction cranes and startup offices and dreams made manifest in glass and steel, one thought kept circling through her mind: who had wanted them both to fail, and why Sarah hadn't slept in 36 hours. Her apartment had become a disaster zone of legal documents, printed emails, and timeline charts that Riley had helped her create. Every surface was covered with evidence of a conspiracy she was only beginning to understand. Okay, walk me through it again, Riley said, balancing her laptop on a stack of case law books. Because this is either the most elaborate revenge plot I've ever seen, or you're having a pregnancy-induced paranoid breakdown. Sarah pointed to the timeline taped to her living room wall. Marcus Bennett approaches me the day after Jake's live stream. Coincidence number 1. He's read my 8-year-old thesis and somehow knows about my AI project. Coincidence number 2. He offers funding right before Jake's presentation. Coincidence number 3. Those could actually be coincidences, Riley said carefully. Rich guys do their homework before approaching potential investments. Then explain this. Sarah handed her a printout. I ran a reverse lookup on the number that leaked Jake's presentation materials to those investors. It traces back to a shell company owned by Bennett Capital Ventures. Riley's expression shifted. Wait, Marcus sabotaged Jake's presentation. Gets worse. I called Patricia Hawkins' office, pretending to be a journalist following up on the story. Her assistant let slip that they'd received an anonymous tip about Jake's stolen intellectual property 2 days before his presentation. Someone specifically told them to watch for discrepancies in development timelines. So Marcus set Jake up to fail, and then used that failure to scare investors away from me. Sarah's voice was bitter. He played both sides, destroyed Jake publicly, made me dependent on him for funding, then pulled the rug out when the scandal made me untouchable. Riley was typing furiously. But why? What does he get out of ruining both of you? That was the question that had kept Sarah awake. Marcus Bennett was wealthy, successful, respected. He didn't need her AI platform or revenge against Jake. So what was his motivation? Sarah's phone buzzed. Marcus, speaking of the devil. Sarah, I've been thinking about our situation. Would you be available for lunch today? I might have a solution. Despite every instinct screaming danger, Sarah agreed to meet. She needed answers, and Marcus was the only person who had them. The restaurant was expensive, quiet, full of Austin's power players making deals over organic salmon and craft cocktails. Marcus was already waiting, looking perfectly composed despite orchestrating the destruction of two people's careers in the past week. "You look tired," he said with what seemed like genuine concern. "I've been doing research," Sarah replied, sliding into the booth across from him. "Oh, into what?" Sarah placed a folder on the table between them. "Into you." Marcus's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. "I know you sabotaged Jake's presentation," Sarah continued. "I know you fed information to those investors. I know you're the reason my funding disappeared. Those are serious accusations. They're facts. The question is why?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. Finally, he sighed. "You're very thorough. I underestimated that." "So you admit it?" "I admit to protecting you from a man who was stealing your work and destroying your reputation. Jake Mitchell is a parasite. He was never going to stop taking from you. By destroying my opportunities too. By removing a threat and creating dependence." Marcus leaned forward. "Sarah, I never planned to abandon your project. I planned to be your only option." The casual admission of manipulation sent chills through Sarah. "What do you want from me?" "I want what I've always wanted, to work with someone brilliant who doesn't realize their own worth." Marcus's voice grew softer, almost paternal. "You remind me of someone I used to know. Someone who had incredible potential, but got sidetracked by the wrong people." Sarah's pregnancy brain was struggling to process the emotional undertones in his voice. There was something personal here, something that went deeper than business. "Who did I remind you of?" Marcus's composure finally cracked, just for a moment. "Your mother." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. "What did you just say?" "Linda Mitchell. Well, Linda Patterson, when I knew her. Beautiful, brilliant, full of dreams about changing the world through education." Sarah's hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the table. "How do you know my mother's maiden name?" "Because I dated her in college. Before she met your father. Before she gave up her master's program to move back to Oklahoma and teach elementary school." The restaurant seemed to tilt around Sarah. Marcus Bennett had known her mother, had dated her mother, had been part of her life before Sarah even existed. "That's impossible. My mother never mentioned you." "I'm not surprised. Our relationship ended badly. I wanted her to stay in Austin, finish her graduate degree, maybe start a company together. She wanted to go home, marry David Mitchell, live a simple life." Sarah felt sick. "So this is what? Some kind of twisted reunion. You couldn't have my mother, so you decided to control her daughter." "It's not that simple." "Then explain it." Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out a photograph, old and creased. It showed a young black man in graduation robes standing next to a young white woman with Sarah's exact eyes and smile. "We kept in touch for a few years after college. She sent me pictures when you were born, updates on your achievements. I knew when you made valedictorian, when you got accepted to UT, when you published that thesis." Sarah stared at the photo of her mother, young and radiant in a way she'd never seen in family albums. "She stopped writing when you got married. Marcus continued. I think she was worried about David getting the wrong idea, but I never stopped following your career. This is insane. You've been stalking my family for decades. I've been watching over you. There's a difference. Sarah stood abruptly, pregnancy making the movement awkward. I need to leave. Sarah, wait. Let me finish. But Sarah was already walking away, past the other diners, past the carefully curated Austin power scene, out into the harsh afternoon sun. Her phone was buzzing with calls from Marcus, but she ignored them. Instead, she called the one person who might have answers. Mom, it's Sarah. I need to ask you about someone you knew in college. Marcus Bennett. The silence on the other end of the line lasted so long that Sarah wondered if the call had dropped. Finally, her mother's voice came through, small and shaken. Oh, honey, how did you find out about Marcus? The truth, when it came, was even worse than Sarah had imagined. Sarah drove to Oklahoma in a fog of disbelief, her mother's confession echoing in her mind. The 3-hour drive from Austin to her childhood home had never felt longer. Marcus wasn't just my boyfriend, honey. We were engaged. Now Sarah sat in her childhood kitchen, watching her mother pace nervously while her father, David, processed the news with his usual quiet intensity. So this son of a bitch has been obsessing over our family for 30 years. David's voice was carefully controlled, but Sarah could see the anger building. David, please, Linda said. It's more complicated than that. How is it complicated, Linda? The man manipulated our daughter and admitted he's been stalking her career since college. Sarah's phone buzzed continuously with calls from Marcus. She'd finally turned it off, but the silence felt almost worse than the harassment. Mom, did you know Marcus had money when you were dating? Linda shook her head. He was just another graduate student then. Smart, ambitious, but broke like the rest of us. I had no idea he'd become so successful. That explained part of the obsession. Marcus had built an empire, achieved everything he'd dreamed of, but the one thing he'd really wanted, Sarah's mother, had chosen a simpler life. So he settled for the daughter instead, Sarah said bitterly. Sarah's phone lit up with an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. Sarah, thank God. We need to talk. Marcus's voice was strained, desperate. I'm done talking to you. Please. Jake is filing for emergency custody of your baby. He's claiming you're mentally unstable, that your association with me proves you're making dangerous decisions. Sarah sank into a chair. You're lying. Check your email. His lawyer sent the papers an hour ago. With shaking hands, Sarah turned her phone back on. 7 missed calls from her lawyer. The subject line made her blood freeze. Urgent emergency custody motion filed. Why are you telling me this? Because I have a way to stop him. Meet me tomorrow morning. I'll explain everything then. After hanging up, David spoke firmly. We're not letting him take that baby. Dad, I can't afford to fight this. Then we'll mortgage the farm again. Sell whatever we have to sell. Sarah's heart broke watching her parents ready to sacrifice everything for her mistakes. I can't let you do that. You can't stop us, Linda said firmly. That's our grandchild. But even as her parents rallied around her, Sarah felt the walls closing in. Jake had money, connections, and now a sympathetic narrative about saving his child from an unstable ex-wife. Her phone rang. Riley. Sarah, where are you? Jake's doing interviews. He's rebranded himself as the victim of a conspiracy between you and Marcus. It gets worse, Riley continued. Amber started a GoFundMe for Jake's legal expenses. It's already raised $50,000. How is that possible? Jake's telling a compelling story. Brilliant entrepreneur betrayed by his bitter ex-wife and her mysterious benefactor. Justice for Jake is trending. Sarah closed her eyes. What's the comment section saying? They're calling you a gold digger, a manipulative woman who got pregnant to trap Jake, then seduced Marcus for his money. After hanging up, her mother sat beside her. Honey, I should have told you about Marcus long ago. When I broke our engagement, he didn't just accept it. He showed up at my work, my apartment. He sent letters, flowers, gifts. He was obsessed, Linda continued. He couldn't accept that I'd chosen a different life. It got bad enough that my father had to threaten legal action. How bad? He broke into my apartment once, left roses on my pillow. When I called police, he claimed he still had a key and was just leaving a romantic gesture. The pattern was becoming clear. Marcus didn't just want control, he needed it. Sarah's phone rang. Marcus, right on schedule. Sarah, I just heard about the emergency hearing. My legal team can have this postponed within the hour, but I need you to sign our agreement first. Why do you need me to sign before helping? Because once you're officially my business partner, I have legal standing to intervene. Your custody situation affects our company's future. The ultimatum was clear. Sign away her freedom to Marcus, or lose her child to Jake. I need 15 minutes. After hanging up, Sarah looked at her parents, the two people who taught her that love meant wanting someone to be happy, not wanting to own them. What would you do? She asked. Sign that contract, David said heavily. Because you can fight your way out of a bad business deal. But if you lose that baby to Jake, you might never get him back. At 9:45 a.m., standing in Marcus's office, Sarah Mitchell signed away her freedom to save her future. The signature felt like a death and a birth all at once. 3 weeks into her new life in Austin, Sarah began to understand the full scope of her mistake. The apartment Marcus had arranged was beautiful, but the lease was in his company's name. Her new office was state-of-the-art, but her computer access was monitored. Her legal expenses were covered, but Patricia Hawkins reported her activities back to Marcus daily. The breaking point came when Sarah discovered Marcus had been intercepting her mail. You've been reading my personal correspondence, she confronted him in his office. I'm protecting our shared interests. Your legal and financial affairs directly impact the company now. This was never about business, was it? This was about control. Marcus's expression didn't change. That's a serious accusation. You orchestrated Jake's downfall specifically to make me desperate enough to accept your deal. You played both sides, destroyed both of us, then positioned yourself as my only salvation. Even if that were true, it doesn't change that I saved you from losing your child. By making me lose myself instead. Sarah turned toward the door, but Marcus's voice stopped her. I don't think you understand your legal situation. Marcus pulled out his phone and showed her a recorded conversation. Her own voice. I'll do whatever it takes to keep Jake from getting custody. Whatever it takes. You recorded me. Breaking your employment agreement would trigger penalty clauses worth $4 million. Your parents' farm is worth about $800,000. Even liquidating everything wouldn't cover your breach of contract. The sophisticated trap was finally visible. Marcus had maneuvered her into a position where leaving would destroy everyone she loved. You're threatening my family. I'm explaining the terms you agreed to. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Riley. Emergency. Call me immediately. Go ahead, Marcus said. But remember, our contract includes communication restrictions. Riley's voice was urgent. Sarah, you're in danger. Marcus isn't who he says he is. His real name is Michael Brennan. He legally changed it after a woman in Dallas accused him of stalking and financial manipulation. Sarah glanced at Marcus, who was watching her with predatory patience. There's a pattern, Riley continued. He targets successful women, gets them financially dependent, then isolates them. The woman in Dallas ended up completely cut off from everyone. When she tried to leave, he destroyed her credit, got her blacklisted. Where is she now? Dead. Suicide. 3 years ago. But she left behind testimony that Marcus has been running this con for decades. Sarah looked at Marcus, who was still watching her with that patient, possessive smile. After ending the call, Sarah realized something terrifying. The contract wasn't just about employment, it included custody provisions. If something happened to her, Marcus would become her child's legal guardian. She was 8.5 months pregnant, completely isolated, financially dependent on a man who'd already destroyed at least one woman's life. The cage was locked, and Marcus Bennett held the only key. Sarah spent that night planning her escape with methodical precision. She had maybe 12 hours before Marcus realized Riley's investigation posed a real threat. At 2 a.m., she whispered into her phone to Riley, "The FBI wants to meet tomorrow. If something happens to me, make sure my parents know the truth." She'd managed to withdraw $300 before her card was blocked. Her car keys had mysteriously disappeared. Even her phone was monitored. At 6 a.m., Sarah called in sick, claiming pregnancy complications. Marcus's response was immediate. "I'm sending Dr. Williams to check on you." Instead of waiting, Sarah grabbed what she could carry and walked out of the building. No car, no credit cards, just cash and determination. She made it 6 blocks before her phone rang. "Marcus." "Sarah, Dr. Williams says you're not at your apartment. Where are you?" "Getting some air. Come back immediately. You're in no condition to be wandering around alone." "I'm pregnant, not an invalid." "You're having a panic attack. This is exactly the behavior that concerned Jake about your mental state." The threat was clear. Marcus could paint her disappearance as a mental health crisis. "I'll be home soon," Sarah lied. "I'm sending Patricia to pick you up. Stay exactly where you are." Sarah hung up and ducked into a coffee shop, calling Riley from a payphone. "They're hunting me. I need help." "Agent Martinez is already in Austin. She's been building a case against Marcus for months. Get to the federal building." But Patricia's BMW was cruising the street, obviously searching. "I can't make it. They're watching for me." "Then we come to you." 20 minutes later, Agent Martinez picked her up in a nondescript sedan. "Ms. Mitchell, we need to move quickly." As they drove, Martinez outlined Marcus's criminal enterprise. "The woman in Dallas who died, we think she was murdered, made to look like suicide. We've identified at least 6 women over 15 years, all successful, all with connections Marcus could exploit. Where are they now? We don't know. Marcus is very good at making people vanish." At a downtown hotel, Martinez set up recording equipment. "We need you to call Marcus one more time." Sarah's hands shook as she dialed. Marcus answered immediately. "Sarah, thank God. Where are you?" "I'm safe. I just needed time to think. Think about what this isn't like you. I know about Dallas, Marcus. I know about Michael Brennan." The silence stretched. When Marcus finally spoke, his voice was completely different, cold, stripped of pretense. "I see. Who have you been talking to? Does it matter? Sarah, you're 8.5 months pregnant, alone in a city where I have considerable influence. Do you think you can hide from me?" "I'm not hiding. I'm leaving." "No, you're not. I'll have you declared mentally incompetent. Your child will be placed in protective custody." "You can't do that." "I can do anything I want. I own your lawyer, your doctor. half the judges in this city. I've been planning this for 3 years. What do you want, Marcus? What I've always wanted. A partner who understands my vision is the only one that matters. Your mother was too stupid to see the opportunities, but you're smarter. Smart enough to recognize a psychopath. I'm a businessman who gets what he wants, and what I want is you, completely and permanently. The baby you're carrying will be raised as mine, and there will be others. Your children. My child now. Once you accept that resistance is pointless, you'll discover being cherished is quite pleasant. Being imprisoned isn't cherishing. Being guided by someone who knows what's best is the purest form of love. Agent Martinez signaled to end the call. Marcus, I have to go. Don't make me hunt you down. Come home voluntarily, and we can discuss this like adults. Force me to find you, and the conversation will be very different. Agent Martinez was already coordinating arrests. That was a confession to multiple federal crimes. We'll have him in custody within the hour. But 2 hours later, Martinez returned grim-faced. We have a problem. Marcus is gone, left with 2 suitcases and instructions to cancel all meetings. He liquidated everything, transferred assets, closed accounts, triggered pre-planned escape protocols. Sarah's phone buzzed. You made a choice, Sarah. Now live with the consequences. Give my regards to your parents. Agent Martinez, we need to call my parents. Right now. When they called the Oklahoma farmhouse, the phone just rang and rang. Sarah was free from Marcus's immediate control, but freedom and safety were 2 very different things. Marcus Bennett was still out there, planning his next move in a game she was only beginning to understand. 6 months later, Sarah stood in her Denver office, watching snowfall outside. Her son Michael slept peacefully beside her desk. She was now CTO of a cybersecurity firm specializing in protecting women from digital stalking and financial abuse. Marcus Bennett had never been found. The FBI tracked him to 3 countries before the trail went cold in Eastern Europe. He was probably building a new identity, finding new victims. But Sarah had learned something important. Real power didn't come from controlling other people. It came from refusing to be controlled. Jake Mitchell had tried restarting his career in Silicon Valley, but the tech community had long memories. Last Sarah heard, he was selling insurance in Phoenix. Riley had won a Pulitzer nomination for her investigative series on Marcus Bennett and predators like him operating among America's business elite. Sarah's parents visited monthly, marveling at their grandson and the woman their daughter had become, not the broken victim Marcus had tried to create, but someone stronger than before. As Sarah worked late, building systems to protect other women from monsters like Marcus, she felt something she'd never experienced: true royalty. Not the kind that came from a man's approval, but from surviving the worst and choosing to protect others. Her phone buzzed with a secure message from Agent Martinez. Possible sighting in Prague. Still hunting. Sarah smiled grimly. Good. When you find him, I'll testify. Because real queens didn't just wear crowns, they forged them in fire and used them to protect their kingdoms. And Sarah Mitchell's kingdom was just getting started.